Dave Pemble. Scott Gergen is not present tonight. Stephanie Malm here, and Kelsey Waits.
Here. Becky, I don't see. Oh, there's the recording thing. Oh, and Brian
just came in.
I've got video issues, so it could be a while.
Okay, well, you can hear us, and so
Absolutely.
that works.
Yep.
All right. So do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So move.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed,
Aye.
same sign. All right, motion carries. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 26th board meeting?
So move. Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. All right, so recognition of visitors. Thank you to everyone who is watching this online or joining us on our call tonight. We do have lots of folks chimed in, which is great. And we're so happy to have you here and excited to hear from you later on. Like right now with our announcements and recognitions.
There we go. So school board and community, we're up and running in school. And so we thought it would be a wonderful thing to recognize our awesome Hastings marching band. And so tonight I have Principal Mike Johnson here to help introduce the folks and talk a little bit about the significance of what happened a couple weeks ago in our awesome stadium, which was really cool to see. So with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Principal Johnson and the band director, staff, and students.
Well, thank you very much. It has been a fantastic fall, and dealing with the spring in a COVID pandemic, the marchers and the directors got together and said, how can we imagine that we can have a season, and hoping for competitions, but not necessarily being guaranteed any. And they got together with a plan and said, we want to make this happen. The boosters have been very, very supportive. We also had new uniforms that we partnered as boosters in a school district to be able to get for the marchers. And we started early on with trying to find a way to make this happen. And it was going to require social distancing, and it was going to require group sizes. But it also was something where this is a very, very successful marching band in the state of Minnesota. There's 5 state championships for the Hastings Raiders marching band in the last 7 years. And without any competitions, this could have been a season that people wrote off, but they didn't. They knew that they have the love of music. They welcomed the opportunity to be together and to do something at their school that we could support them in a positive way. And they wanted to play for the community and for the parents. And a couple of weeks ago, there was a wonderful fall show. There were 3 performances on Saturday and then a performance and recognition on Sunday. And it doesn't happen without great people. And Jonah Walt is the drum major. There's a lot of senior section leaders and other seniors that are here that really came together. So I'll introduce our directors, certainly very, very giving people, parents and musicians. So I'll turn it over to Emily Chandler, Tom Wentzler, and Josh Wallstrom.
Thank you, Mike. We're just thrilled that we were able to have a season happen, and we're so proud of the students into every single practice. Even without competitions, they acted like it was a competitive season. They put the drive, they put the initiative and their heart and their passion out every practice. So it was amazing. Mr. Wentzler, do you have any words you'd like to say? And then I'll introduce the seniors.
The opportunity to teach has been a very rewarding. We always tell the kids, be thankful, but never be satisfied. And this year we were both thankful and satisfied because we got a chance to be together and we got a chance to be working on the things that we do well. Mr. Johnson, thank you for those kind words. Mrs. Chandler, Mr. Wallstrom, thank you for a great season. Those planning thoughts became our students' success.
Thank you. Our 19 seniors led the way. They never let down at any rehearsal. So I'm just going to introduce from where I see everyone on their Zoom. We've got Dakota Zwingner, alto saxophone. Dakota, yep, give a wave. Thank you. Jonah Walt, our drum major that led us charging away this season. Hannah Steele, piccolo. Awesome. And Tess Nordine, color guard, one of our color guard captains. Becca Mitchell, color guard captain and our soloist in our ballad. Aiden Endress, tenor player, percussion section leader. Preston Cage, senior trumpet player. Owen Matzik, senior battery snare drum performer. Linnea Hansen, frontline percussion marimba performer. And William Matzik, I see his name, our senior bass drum player. So they helped lead the way and created a lot of memories. We didn't know what we were going to get into back in March, and I couldn't have predicted that this season would have been as rewarding as it was. And that's because of the kids and the staff and all of your support of, can we make this happen even with the limitations that we have? And it was awesome. So I think there is a video, a little clip that Becky wanted to share as well. So now it would be great if you're able to turn that over and share your screen. Can you guys hear it? I appreciate and want to thank Hastings Community TV for recording two of our performances and being able to see that drone footage is unreal. It's amazing. So, and thank you to the school board for inviting us tonight to share in our good news and share in our wonderful season that we had this year. We wanted to make it memorable for the students, and I really think that everyone is leaving with a fantastic core group of memories from this year.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing it with us. And I mean, my family, we love watching all your performances, and they're just so fun. So thank you. And I'm so glad that we were able to do a different season, but a season. So
Absolutely. Awesome.
All right. Well, anything else that we would like to say right now? All right. Well, thank you again for joining us tonight. And I hope you have a great week.
Thank you.
All right. So then next up, sorry, I had just gotten a note that I needed to refresh the meeting. Are our items for discussion. So we have a first read for a policy headed forward, which is the sex non-discrimination policy, the Title IX policy. And so, Stephanie, did you want to go through that at all?
Sure, I can do that. It's going to take me a minute. I'm traveling right now, so I only have my little computer. So the policy 522, the Title IX sex non-discrimination policy. We went through this as a committee and just kind of fine-lined certain things in here. And then Bob did send it to the attorney for review, and the red remarks on there are what they came back with. Did everybody get the opportunity to take a look at it? Were there any questions or comments or concerns about the Title IX policy and the procedures and what we're looking for?
I'm sorry I had to step away to deal with a fan issue, but my only question was, there's substantive changes in this from the base document, and I'm just curious what the driver was on that. I know some federal legislation or federal direction has changed on Title IX, or if this is something different.
Yeah, so from my understanding, we do have a policy, but this is a totally new one. So new wording, and this is based off of the model policy from MSBA. Sorry, I got to toggle back. Dr. McDowell, do you have any comments about that, about the changes that the law office had made?
No, not really. Well, it could or couldn't be the law office, but there's some significant changes, and you'll see the red additions to, like, at the beginning in the general statement, just redefining what the prohibition is on, and this idea that it's all sex in all forms, and then it goes on to do a more descriptive narrative around what does a complaint look like, who should people go to, and what does the process of following up on the complaint look like. And then at the very end, you'll see, let's see, what section is that? At the very end of definition, section 4, you'll see that there were some significant redactions with regard to sexual assault and changes there. And then, like I was saying, just this idea that you have to have these different people in place. So you have to have Title IX personnel to include a coordinator, an investigator, decision maker, and then an appeals or arbitrator, and the district's required to set that up. And so this really does not a 180, but a more comprehensive description of what has to be in place based on the new legislation that came out. So I don't know if that helps or confuses, but that's why all the change.
Yeah, I think that helps. It's just unusual to me to see this substantial a change if it's based on an MSBA model policy. And so
Right.
that is the piece that caught my eye. I felt like it's very clarifying, and that's fine. I was just surprised by the amount of change.
I agree, Lisa. It is based on, from the MSBA based model policy. Really, the biggest changes are adding in those definitions to provide that clarity, so that there's no questioning about what this policy covers. So that's the substantive changes to this policy.
I guess I was looking at it and wanted to make sure that, we started with the MSBA guidelines or policy, and then made sure it went through our legal area. And I'm comfortable with it, and I think we should move it on.
You're muted, Lisa.
I'm going the opposite direction to Stephanie, which is I tried to step up my technology level, and I got 2 screens and a whole bunch of stuff, and now I can't find the right buttons. Well, I think we can move it on to a second reading. We can't move it on to action tonight. Is that correct? Because we're at the first reading, so it would be action
Correct.
in October.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So do we have any other questions about this? Does the policy committee need to go back, or are we good with bringing this to the second reading then? All right. Sounds good. So next up is the budget adjustments process.
All right. Chair Waits and School Board, as I mentioned at our work session, I'd be bringing back our guiding change document and have put into it some changes. We'll see how well I can kind of guide us through getting some more clarity, particularly around what our desired results are. So I'd be welcoming a discussion. I'm going to throw up a shared screen that I could edit like we did last time as we talk through it. I did add in there, as you see in your documents, in different colors, the suggestions and or recommendations that were given to me. And let's see, I've got the wrong screen going on here. Get this figured out yet?
Well, we saw the guiding change document brought up.
You did? Maybe
Yep.
I just saw the wrong thing.
Nope, it was up.
All right, here we go. You got it now?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So as you can see, as the public can see on it then, on the context and current reality, as I scroll down, not to make people busy, or dizzy rather, there was only one real addition to that, and it was an acknowledgement that prior cuts have been disproportionately borne at the elementary, middle school levels. For example, closing sites, modifying structure of the school day. So my question there would be to the school board, is that something you want in there? Do you want it written differently? Does that belong as part of our current reality context?
I guess I'd like to see it in there, but maybe noted a little differently, because some of those changes were, they're several years in the past, and I guess I would start with just the, noting in prior years, there's been disproportionate change in the elementary and middle school levels, and note that the modification of the closing of sites, it looks like the way it's written, we're highlighting the point of closing the sites and changing the structure of the school day. And I would rather just note that these things have happened and we need to be cognizant of that without drawing in the point of, somehow we need,
All right, does that capture that?
yeah, and then just wipe out the rest. To me, that's okay. That fits better. I would have, taken it and said, okay, these are issues that how it was done to correct a problem in the past. Prior years is fine.
To align to the language that we're using in this process of budget adjustment, I think maybe my suggestion would be in that first blue bullet, prior year budget adjustments. And
Okay.
I don't know, disproportionately might be a subjective word.
Right.
Well, it's not, might be, it is a subjective word. So prior year budget adjustments have been significantly borne or
Okay.
substantively borne.
Substantially, that would.
Any other thoughts on that one? I'm going to scroll back up while you're thinking, just so you can see the rest of what's listed as the current reality of where we are. Okay, any other thoughts in current reality? Any other verbiage that we would look at changing? Okay, I'll move on to desired results. There were some suggestions to desired results. And just a reminder that this is the desired results column is a column we try to put together that once we have completed our budget adjustment process, this is what we're hoping that it looks like. This is what we're hoping the outcome is. And so the words that are in black type are the ones that were there previously. And again, blue is additional comments. And then this one also has some green comments. So maybe we'll just work down bullet by bullet to see if people are in agreement of keeping this or maybe waiting on it or changing it, deleting it. So for example, that first blue one, desired result would then mean that class sizes end up at slightly above the mean of that Metro EXU. And is that something that we want to put in there as a desired result? Doesn't mean that it will absolutely happen, but that's something we're looking towards when we look at that Metro report.
So 2 points. One, I am comfortable with saying that I don't love it. I'm not going to love any of these bullets, but I'm comfortable saying that as a guideline. What I'm not sure that can be resolved tonight, other than getting a sense of generally yes or generally no on the added bullets. Some of these bullets, this one, for example, if you scroll up, there's something about maintaining low class size.
Yes.
Hoping our class sizes can remain low. So those two bullets are, they're not at odds, but they're not in straight alignment. So I'm not sure if this is
the conversation.
Yeah. So I think in the reality of this process, the blue bullet stays and the black bullet disappears because that's one, it's not a guideline, two, it's a hope. It's a hope. And it's, I'm not willing to sacrifice all other potential cuts at that bullet item.
I guess, Lisa, my thought there was that class sizes, at or slightly above, and I would like to have in there maybe at or slightly above. Kind of give us, the way it's read there, it's like, okay, class sizes will be at or slightly above. Class sizes may be at or slightly above.
Okay.
Is a little more comforting, I think.
But
Because as you go,
then do you think, Dave, that you can get rid of
yes,
open class? I mean, again, I don't want anybody to think going through this process of saying this out loud that we're in favor of large class sizes. That's not what's
not at all.
happening. But
Not
in
at
terms
all.
of trade-offs, I think we have
Right.
to be realistic.
And I
guess
agree.
where I'm feeling conflicted too is that having a larger classroom is not a desired result; it's an acceptable result. I think if we, just clarifying that it's not. This is not. Well, none of this is really what we really want, but it's
Correct.
acceptable results. So
Right.
What if to rotate it so that it's more of a desired result, it says something like class sizes would not exceed the mean or slightly above the regional metro SQ. So like we desire that it does not exceed that number.
I guess I'd go with desire.
Okay, so as much fun as it is to do document editing in a group, I think the hard question at hand, because we can wordsmith the bejesus out of that bullet, is: are we willing to remove? Do we acknowledge that we have to remove, hoping that class sizes can remain low? Because then we can wordsmith the next bullet all we want. Then we got to get into the bullet after that about program elimination. When we have don't eliminate programs, this is about resolving the conflict, not about, I think, not about wordsmithing.
Yep, fair enough. And it will continue to be a draft at this point. So, I mean, if we can get through this.
I like that we have the program elimination is understandable for programs with low enrollments. And I like that we are saying the class sizes are slightly above or at or like desired amount. I don't want to say that our elementary classes are going to go to this and this, and we're going to keep our programs that have really low numbers we're going to keep those class sizes either. So I kind of wanted that. Can we intertwine it somehow? Or, we don't want to see our elementary class. I don't know how to word it properly, but somehow we'll evaluate programs with very low enrollment, but also try and maintain class sizes at a desired or, around the mean or something like that.
So are you thinking, Becky, that, leave in that hoping that our class sizes remain low?
I just don't want it to say that, because want all the class sizes above or slightly above mean, but then I don't want it to say that, then we're going to keep, I don't know. I'm thinking as, if we're going to keep a class that has, in the high school for an elective program, but then we're going to say that, the possibility that the elementary classes are going to go up 5 students a class. I don't want that to kind of come across. When I'm seeing this, that it says class sizes, it could be all of them,
Right.
That's what
and Metro SQ does have class sizes all the way up through every level. So I hope that helps. But I do think your point is important, which is, as I hear it, is we have to say something about class sizes and say something about programs.
Exactly.
Because we need those both to be articulated.
Yes.
The challenge right now is we're saying 2 different things about programs and 2 different things about class sizes. And I think we need to eliminate the black statements about program elimination and class size. But I agree with you, Becky, keeping that bracket of those things together, because we are going to have to look at them in comparison to each other.
Is there anyone?
So I would propose striking those 2 black ones for a draft purpose. I mean, they don't have to be gone forever, but for the next draft, that those get lined through.
Yeah, I would agree with Lisa.
I'll accept that.
So we go there. And are you referring to this one, Lisa?
The one above it.
Oh.
The hoping we don't have program eliminations is in conflict with the program elimination is understandable.
So we'll strike through like that for now then. Okay. Do we want to move on to and like we said before, we can wordsmith those 2 blue ones. Do we want to move on to the high school graduation bullet point?
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess part of me is a little bit confused about, like, it feels like some of these are like we're making suggestions for different possibilities that we could take rather than what our desired results are. And so, I mean, that had gotten kind of brought up earlier, but yes, high school graduation requirements could be aligned. Is that a desired result, or is that just a statement that we would like to throw out there for administrators to be thinking of?
I see your point on that, and I will acknowledge that I'm the one that put this forward because I know we do run into conflicts, and this is part of why we do summer programming for FIED, quite honestly, and health is to resolve our higher standard. And I will
And this
say,
is
after
just me
reading,
trying to understand the document.
yeah, no, I know, and I will say I had drafted a couple comments, and then I read Dr. McDowell's comments when he sent them out and sort of refined, and I was like, wow, okay, I'm too far in the weeds. I'm not even going to submit mine. And then with a little bit of prodding, I did, and I can see where this one is in the weeds. At the same time, I think keeping it in the mix. It doesn't have to be on this list as a desired outcome. I would like it to be it just acknowledged that this is our current reality.
I think we have to keep it in that area. I mean, this is our tweaking of our outline on how we're going to work to the staff and move forward with this process. And so I think that there's a point of at least leaving it there and working around when the time comes, looking at and evaluating how that issue ties to our first column.
How about if I highlight this one for right now as something that we're going to come back to then, unless there's
Okay.
faces here on my other screen while I'm doing this to see if there's.
Yep.
Let's, at a minimum, let's strike the final parentheses part, which was just me thinking out loud once I typed it out.
In real life.
Irregardless, yes,
yeah,
irregardless, that doesn't belong.
Take that out.
It was a shocking realization once I finished typing my thought on it, but it certainly doesn't belong in this document.
So maybe I'll highlight this one for now as something that we may want to move, may want to come back to, may do something different with.
Okay.
May strike at some point, but it's all right. The next one, Allied Arts, will be presented in elementary and middle school for exposure exploration. Is that a desired result for the group?
I saw this bullet working in concert with one of the black bullets. Once I read it, to me it sort of speaks to the protecting our fine arts program, and I saw it as a refinement of that, or maybe an explanation. But so I think those are somemehow related bullets.
Looking at this one,
yeah,
aligning with this one.
Yeah.
You want me to move it up to that one?
Can we tweak them together?
That's what I mean. I can move them together.
Yeah, move them together, and then some super smart administrative person, I'm looking at you, Dr. McDowell, will find a language alignment. Because I just see it, and when I read it, it's a clarification.
Okay. We have work to do on that one. Okay. The next one in blue is that the mission statement calls out working in partnership with the community, align budget with this district dollars go to educating students to state standards and community partners or community ed support enrichment.
Yeah, take that chunk out of there.
That goes out. Comments, questions, concerns with that one?
Desiring to align the budget with district dollars. I guess I'd like to see something in there, desiring something in there about, instead of just hard setting aligning the budget, but desiring to align the budget in district dollars forward to educate students to state standards. Something along those lines. Lisa, what sounds better?
I'm reading that again, and I wonder if there isn't, it's almost 2 bullets. District mission statement.
Yeah, okay, and
Working
then
in partnership
stop
with the
there and move
community.
down.
And well, I don't know, that's just a statement of reality.
This one maybe doesn't fit inside of this context of desire.
I think maybe that's why I'm having a hard time reading that bullet.
Okay,
Because we already have the mission statement at the top of the page.
So maybe
So is it, do we desire evident partnerships with community
okay,
partners? That's bad wordsmithing. We're going to use partnership and partners in the same sentence. But much like when you go down into the green bullets, that my vision is not good enough to read on my screen.
yeah, the green
You talk about
read.
that like mental health programming is overtly overtly recognizable. So maybe community partners, work with community partners is overtly recognizable.
So block that right
I don't
there.
know.
anyone else have any suggestions, comments on that one? I'm thinking at this point, this part gets highlighted.
Yep.
Try to figure something out with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about that next one? I wasn't quite sure exactly what that was getting at.
That's Lisa's, right?
It was, and what I was trying to get at, and I obviously was not obviously now. I was getting tired when I wrote that. I think I was trying to link something. I was trying to link a passing thought back to the recognition that just last year, we as a board chose to add over $1 million in special services support. And some of that's in mental health services. Some of that was in direct student services. It was different places. But I'm trying to, I don't know, I think I was just restating that when I started to think about the scope of the changes. As I look at it now, it doesn't need to be there, but that's where my thinking came from. It came from, we put this all in there. We need to look at it closely again, but
should that?
I don't know that it needs its own bullet. It's definitely a how-to. Looking at it,
But I think part of this comes back to what we had talked about as we made some of those additions, which is the strategic, like specifically with mental health, is there a way that we can make these costs sustainable with strategic choices, or what can we be doing long term, like with student mental health and things like that. And I know that's not going to get us $1 million, but how do we? And that was a question we had months ago, right? Is that what does this look like long term? So,
right, and it was a question that we asked when the ads were made, and there was no answer given. Right. I mean, there wasn't here's the trade-off. People didn't come forward with the trade-off. So now we're in the trade-off discussion, as Scott pointed out at our last meeting. And so again, it's definitely, I would feel comfortable with it coming off as a person who emailed it in, because I do think it's a how-to. But I think your point is right at the heart of it, Kelsey, which is the sustainable mental health support. We still have to do our we have to achieve state standards of educational practice. And we'd made the ad. We don't know if that was the right size ad. We don't know that that was a sustainable ad, so I want us to acknowledge or recognize that there's not a fence around that work that was done last year. It's not that it all needs to be eliminated. I think it needs to be evaluated for sort of on the same scale.
Can we say
So-
something about partnering to provide special services? I don't know.
Well, I mean maybe we could. That's not quite the point I was trying to make with this, in that it really was. I just want to acknowledge that evaluating. Well, we want to maintain strong mental health supports. That the services we currently provide still need to be in the budget adjustment discussion. I think that's all I was trying to say with this.
Sure. So 3 bullets down where we've got it written, all programming will meet all 3 criteria. I mean, that truly is getting at all programming. That's instructional programming, special services, community ed, anything we're doing that we're expending resources on. That gets to the desired result is that it is sustainable, it's feasible, it's something that's desirable programmatically. Does that help capture that, or is it something specific enough based on what I just heard you that we would want a like statement that specifically called out special services in the same light, meaning special services will meet all 3 criteria as we move forward?
I'm okay with all programming meeting all 3 criteria. I don't know that, but Lisa, you're the one who put it in.
Yeah,
So
no, I'm comfortable with that too, especially given the discussion. I mean, we've had an overt discussion about it, and I'm comfortable that everybody's hearing what's being said. So I'm comfortable with it not being.
I guess I would take it out
draft.
and then follow the all programming. Okay, you can strike it. Yeah, whatever works. But noting that all programming, we as the board have to remember where we're at and where we were at last year with special services.
All right. So then the last bullet points that we had there. Oops, I didn't change these to the dark blue. Sorry about that.
The
These
green
are
was fine if it would have been a little darker.
Yeah. So the last bullet points here are the ones that I shared with the board as part of my weekly update. And those were, just so people that are on the call, those were me just sharing from my perspective after thinking about our first discussion, what I would add or to the conversation. So I don't know, I mean, as a board, what you might not like about those statements. Some of them are like the ones that we just talked through. They're similar to what we have up above in some of the black statements, but just written a little bit differently. I guess at this point, what I would want to know is simply if there's any that you don't like or wouldn't want to keep, and if there whatever we keep, what I would do next is piece all of these together and make them into one bulleted list then. If there was overlap, I guess, if there's 2 that are similar, I'd rework them so they're into one bullet. If they look like they need to be broken out into 2, I would do that next.
Bob, shoot down a little bit so I can see the rest.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm comfortable letting you work out common language for common bullets. The one that feels tricky to me,
Yep.
and maybe isn't saying quite the same thing, was that conversation about class size relative to Metro SQ and instructional size about adding
Sure.
a section. My only concern, I think the heart of my concern is that this instructional size is being defined almost feels operational. Like, I'm not sure that, I know we've given ranges in the past and talked about that when we've done other budget adjustments, but saying, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable saying below 12, we're not going to run a class because I'm not going to understand the larger scope. Now, I think administrators administrators would know those guidelines.
Sure. And this one
But
was
I'm
really
willing to read
established.
what you put forward.
I guess I'm looking at it and thinking that, we're at a fairly decent, good point. There'd be some thoughts moving forward, but I'd be willing to let you tweak on it some more and give it back to us.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I kind of just was questioning with all the programming. Is there a way to like all programming in division or like operational divisions or something will meet the criteria? Are we looking at not just our class sizes, our programs, but also all departments? Are they
Sure.
something that we can do to revamp things, or not just the class sizes programming, but all departments in general? Kind of word that in there somehow.
And if I'm hearing you correctly, kind of doing the same thing with this statement.
Yes, but with, or you can add it to that, or just something with, all departments, or operational, or however you want to word that,
Sure.
that we're making sure that we're looking at everything, is are we overstaffed in this, but not this, not just the mental health or the special services, but is there a place that we can, shift things or combine something, or
I'm going to do it as a separate bullet for now.
Yep, that's fine.
So that we keep it separated, but yeah. Yep.
Yeah. One of my only other thoughts is with the defining the specific program numbers, that I just wonder if having something very specific can cause us issues with some of the other bullets, such as, putting equity and things first. So if our cutoff is 12 and there's 11 students signed up for, one class that they had done at the high school was creating an all female section of some of the shop classes. And that ended up getting more gender balance in who was taking the courses. And so kind of having these numbers guided by that overall vision of the goal that we have with the class sizes. And so that would be my only concern with putting a very strict number. But yeah.
Okay. So I'll keep that one highlighted then. I think that's one you're referring to, right, Kelsey, as well?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? We're getting there.
Do you feel, I appreciate the positive feedback. Is this starting to look more like a sandbox in your estimation?
Yeah, I think so. I think, right, it's a work in progress, particularly for a board, to really to wrap your head around, what is the desired result, because it is a balance as we look at budget adjustments of there's a fine line between what is operational and what is governance when we're talking budget adjustments, right? Because as a board, you've got a fiduciary responsibility, and in the end, everything is linked to dollars and cents, right? It starts out as vision and strategy, and then goes into programming. But then when we get down to it, it really ends up being a dollars and cents question, and that's where the board comes in. And so we're getting there, because what we really, I guess what I really want as a board is to make sure that we have clarified an agreement between all of you into what is that sandbox that you want us to make sure we understand what to work inside of as we put options together. And it's not just reducing, but it could be redesigning. And so I think we're getting closer, and I'll wordsmith the middle part and send it back out this week so that I can get some feedback from all of you and see if we can, get it nailed down really fairly quickly at this point. To that end, I don't know if there's anything more than the 2 bullets as far as unacceptable means that anyone thinks of or can think of.
No, I don't want to get too far into that on the unacceptable means. We could bullet that one to death almost.
Okay. Okay. All right. I will take it back and rework some of that and get it back to you then.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So then moving on, we are at the superintendent report.
Okay. I'll keep this really short. I have folks on the Zoom call tonight to help do some specific areas, but I did want to make sure that I updated on some things related to COVID really quickly, and then just give some updates with just some operational pieces. So first of all, if you've been paying attention to any of the COVID case numbers, we are on a roller coaster right now. We are way up, way down. We went back up again, and now the last 2 days we've been way down again. So, and that's for Dakota County. Last week we were officially at a 21 count per 10,000, which keeps us hovering right in hybrid. What I'm sharing with people is that because we're starting to get questions about when do we look at going back to in-person for elementary, what does that look like? And we would really need to be living in that mid-teens, so 15, 16 for an extended period of time, because I think what we don't want to do is jump into something like in-person and then be forced right back out again. That's going to play havoc with schedules more so than we already have. In addition to that, if we would get down into the teens, that's when we would be working with our regional support team, and they would be helping us problem solve through all the different components to include the numbers per 10,000. What does everything else look like more localized to us? And then that's when we would start communicating out to families that it looks like we're going to be moving into in-person for a while, and we would be giving some heads up on that. So if it won't be a 24-hour turnaround or anything like that is what I've explained to families. The other thing I wanted to point out is we're tracking now our cases in our buildings in terms of who is out, whether that's students or staff. We have, as of Tuesday, we've had cumulatively 190 students that have been out due to related items. So a thing to point out and make sure we're very clear about there are multiple reasons for someone to be out of school right now. It could be a COVID-like symptom. It could be that a student or a staff member came in close contact with someone with a COVID-like symptom. It could be that someone came in close contact with someone who has tested positive. And it could be that they've had symptoms and have tested positive themselves. To this point, we have only had 2 positive cases so far involving our contact tracing methods across all of our buildings. We've had, like I said, cumulatively 190 students out, and we've cumulatively had 36 staff out to this point based on these reasons. And so those are people that have to be out for an extended period of time. We're anticipating that MDE and MDH are going to be putting out a statewide update that will show school districts and what their cases are as they relate to the official counts. Just remember, everything that we have, even from the county, comes in as a preliminary count, and then it has to be verified. And that's why the Department of Health's numbers that come out on Thursday are always about a week and a half late, because those numbers have all been verified. Okay, so moving on from there, our iPads to elementary schools. Those have been delivered to elementary schools, and we'll be starting the process of getting those out to all of our families. So we will be moving forward on that. Our hybrid calendar moving through the end of the first semester is fairly solidified on the administrative side. So I believe we're going to be able to publish what the AA Flex BB schedule will look like out through the end of the first semester, so that families have an idea of what that schedule is and days off and things like that. Hopefully we'll get that out the rest before the end of this week. And then just an update on our Hastings Online Academy, so these are the students that have chosen to go online full-time, is at 708 students. 238 of those are elementary students, 244 are middle school students, and 226 are high school students. And again, those are students that have chosen to go online full-time. And lastly, for those who haven't been in the loop on sports, the Minnesota State High School League approved on Monday that football and volleyball will have a modified fall season. The schedules have been getting finalized and should be out later this week. It looks right now that it will be about a 6-week season. I haven't seen anything with regard to what post-conference regular season play will look like yet. And I'm assuming that'll come out here in the next few days as well. There's going to be some very strict guidelines around fans at the games. For example, we believe that there'll be a maximum of 250 people at a football game because it's outside, and most likely there won't be any visitors or fans able to come into a volleyball match because it's indoors. So there's lots of precautions that are being put into place. The Minnesota State High School League is finalizing all of the requirements yet this week. But just so people are aware, we'll be back up and running with pretty much all of our high school sports now. With that, if there aren't any questions, I will turn it over to Jen Subert because she has the next piece on the report with regard to construction funds.
Good evening. The bond summary has been updated through August. All of the projects are continuing kind of as expected. If there's any questions related to that bond summary, I can address them. Otherwise, there's really nothing new for me to add.
All right. Hearing none, I'm going to move on to Jen Reichel, who will be giving us an update on science programming.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to walk you through a quick slide deck. So I want to talk a little bit about the science curriculum review update because there are some changes on the horizon. As a quick overview, the Minnesota Department of Ed revises their standards at a state level on a 10-year cycle. And they put out in statute when those standards will be revised. So just to give some context, arts, which is visual, music, performing arts, were revised during the 17-18 school year. Science was revised in 18-19. English language arts was on deck last year. They have not yet finished up. Social studies is supposed to be this year, and math is off to the future. The process involves, during that year, MDE will share 3 drafts with the public, typically in late fall, midwinter, and then May. And throughout that process, MDE invites feedback. And then once those standards are finalized at the MDE level, then they put it through to rulemaking, which really suggests that once a content area goes through the revision at the state of Minnesota, there's typically 3 to 4 years following that year where there's an implementation process. And then after that, we might, if it's in an area where there are MCA tests, then the MCA tests will be up for kids to participate in. So when we talk about science review, it was atypical in that there were pretty significant shifts to the standards. Typically, they refine and they look at what's not working, what do we want to tweak or change, and it doesn't require a whole lot of significant instructional change to classrooms in systems. Science, however, is shifting from an old model and really taking on some of those practices that are shared by the the national science standards. And those 3 shifts really are about the instructional pedagogy. So all of the standards now are going to be based on what they're aligning within the 3 dimensions: the science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts, which are an example would be patterns, where we can see patterns not only in life science, but physical science and earth science. So that thread that helps kids see how science is interrelated rather than specific disciplinary areas. And then we want to make sure that we continue to touch on those disciplinary core ideas. Because they are making the change to those 3 dimensions, there's a realignment of which topics are being addressed at which grade levels. And because of that, there's going to be a change in the scope and sequence of courses, which is where, when the boots hit the ground, if you will, where we're going to see publicly the biggest shifts. So currently, our scope and sequence of courses in 6th grade, our kiddos are in physical science. Then they move to life science in 7th grade. 8th grade, they go to earth science. 9th grade, we go for the high school version of physical science. 10th grade is biology, which is really, the high school version of life science. And then students can choose between chemistry or physics. In our district, many of our students do both. They will do chemistry at 11 and then physics in 12th. With the change in the standards, they are really shifting a new scope and sequence. And so the 6th grade standards will be earth science standards. 7th grade will remain life science. And then they've added physical science in 8th grade, thinking that the students understand those concepts a little bit better as they mature. And then we put earth science in 9th grade, keep biology at 10th grade, and then again, chemistry and or physics in those 11th and 12th grade years. So like I said, pretty significant shifts. So MDE has offered a number of different transition pathways, if you will, of how we can make this change and reduce that replication of content for kids. And so if you travel down any particular color diagonal, that's following a cohort of students. And so if you take a look, let's say at these purple kiddos, they would do what they typically do this year, which is the 09, the previous version of the life standards. Then next year they would do earth. And then the year after that, they would do physical with a little bit of earth, and then we would move to life. If you take a look at the blue line, you're going to see some repetition of content from earth to earth, and then, moving into physical. And so as our science team met, they really grappled with what kind of implementation timeline might we like to do, knowing that in 23-24 is when we currently anticipate that we'll have to have full implementation. Like I shared on the previous slide, we're still in rulemaking, so we don't know that deadline, but our science contact from the state has suggested that they're really advocating for a 5-year implementation timeline and looking to push out those MCAs until the 23-24 school year. So our team met and they came up with this as what they'd like to do. So this year, we're making a change, and our 6th graders are going to participate in some earth science content. So the benefit of this is that our 6th grade teachers who have not been inducted into that earth science content have the availability of their 8th grade partners to learn that content. And at the same time, they're not shifting the standards to include those 3 dimensions. Having the content familiar this year, then next year they'll make the change to the new standards. So then they will have a foundation of understanding of earth science, but then we'll shift to those 3 dimensions. We look at implementing life in the 23-24 school year, physical science in that same year, and then waiting until 23-24 to implement earth and biology. So the good thing about that is that as we walk through a journey of any particular student, they will not have years of back-to-back content. the challenge is that this year, our sixth grade students and our eighth grade students might be accessing similar resources in tying to earth science standards. Our sixth grade teachers, however, are really looking at what is age appropriate. And so they won't be walking through the same course. They will be walking through similar content, though. So I'm here tonight to really share with you, here's what we're doing and why we're doing it. So currently our sixth and eighth graders may interact with similar texts. Like I said, content and tasks will be adjusted for age appropriate interaction. We're going to be ahead of the curve as it relates to MCAs. So when we think about this 23-24 year, we'll have made the transition in every area except for these two prior to the MCAs, when really we don't need to until this year. And then I would say one of the benefits that is also a drawback is that we are going to be in a constant state of change for the next 4 or 5 years in science. So that was my super quick update. What questions do you have for me about this science curriculum implementation?
Does anyone have any questions? No, as always, I always think you do a great job, Jen, and working with the teachers to come up with a plan that works for our district. So
I have a broader curriculum review question, and I appreciated the initial slide that gave us the cycle of all the categories. My question is there a physical education or health curriculum review at the state level, and where does that fall in the cycle? Where are we at in that cycle?
So they reviewed 2 years ago. So last year I started meeting, it was last year. So last year I met with the team and we started working through those shifts. And I don't think we have an implementation timeline. And it looks different for some of those areas that aren't tied to an MCA, because that implementation timeline is so connected to when the next iteration of the MCA comes out. But our Phy-Ed and health folks are in process right now of shifting to meet the new standards.
Okay, thank you. I just think that's an area that so directly impacts our students' daily life, and we just learn more about good practices every day. And so I appreciate that we're right at the beginning of a new cycle. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Jen?
All right. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Jen.
So then next up, we have Gabe Moreno with us here tonight. There's Gabe.
Hello.
And we wanted to make sure that we gave you information on our American Indian Education Aid application, because that's something that is in the news, in making sure we're getting lots of requests and reminders to make sure that we're staying updated and doing our due diligence in this area. So we wanted to make sure we brought Gabe in so he could explain the work that's going on and the application that we will be submitting.
Thank you, Bob. So I'll share over here. Here we go. Well, thank you everybody thanks for your time tonight. Pleasure to be speaking with the board. This is a summary of our Indian Education Program Plan, which is essentially the same as our aid application. So brief overview. Because we have more than 10 American Indian students in our district, we have an American Indian Parent Advisory Council. They're meeting about 6 times this year. And we are following a timeline of October 1st of submitting our plan to the Department of Education, following up before March 1st with a resolution of compliance. And again, June 1st, continuing our programming. So we're in this first stage, and I want to let you know a little bit about our plan. It is tied to World's Best Workforce, those goal areas being kindergarten readiness, third grade reading, closing the achievement gap, college and career readiness, and high school graduation. So the plan itself and the aid application is structured out to effectively meet these 5 categories. How we have attempted to meet the needs of American Indian students and use this funding purposefully has been through our Books with Native Peoples and Cultures. There's a particular emphasis in getting text on Native Americans, authored by Native Americans, as well as and so that would be part of our books. So we've worked at getting additions into libraries and also classroom sets. For sure, at our K through 6 level, I believe last year included purchases K through 8. We also support preschool scholarships. Oh, I apologize. I should point out the numbers behind these bullet points correlate with the categories where we included funding for strategies of closing kindergarten readiness, 3rd grade reading, etc. goals. Artifact trunks have been something that the Parent Advisory Committee has been excited to support. The notion with artifact trunks is definitely creating tangible opportunities for student learning. And this year, I should note, consideration in the aid application is that we do need a plan for in-distance, hybrid, and distance learning. So we are thinking about ways we can continue to use the investment in artifact trunks, and some modules are being developed for Seesaw and hopefully for Schoology as well, so that should we move to distance learning or should we stay in a hybrid scenario, that we're going to be able to use these resources. The books and the trunks come together in some professional development days. We had a team of staff come in last year and spend time reviewing, interacting with artifacts, and aligning that to their curriculum. And we imagine doing that again this year. An area we also continue to fund is guest speakers. So that would be when there is an opportunity for a consultant or for a Native elder who has their own, who is self-employed and has their own business, to partner with us for opportunities. Last year, we invested some of that money into a joint effort with some neighboring districts, where we funded some elders who came into some drum and dance classes that our families had the opportunity to participate in. We also then meet and are obligated to meet as a committee. This year at our September meeting, we had 6 parents and 1 student attend, which was a really robust roster for us. I felt very good about that. And at those evenings, we do have some culturally appropriate and relevant materials, both as a community building opportunity, but also as a way of furthering our knowledge of culture. I am also part of this funding then, so I am 1 to 5, and an emphasis for me this year is on an increased presence in our elementary schools and a goal of connecting with all American Indian education students. Last year, there was a purposeful rollout with my position being new of focusing focusing high school and middle school. I'm excited to connect K-12 this year. And with regards to our preschool scholarships to help support families who are desiring to access pre-K education as well. And then one of the more fun silver linings of the role is the opportunities I get to spend with students. One of those great opportunities is college visits. And we have typically allocated some funding for that. I would note that in the 3 different plans, the only real budget difference between the 3 plan centers around transportation, and that was reallocated into other fund areas to reinforce what we are doing in the event that we go to distance. That needed to be accounted for. So this budget is an increase from last year, and we're reinvesting in many of the strategies, but with an emphasis this year on personally reaching more families and students at all grade levels. And I think, so that's what I have to share with you. I believe the process then is, I think I saw on the agenda at some point, the board will kind of review this, and we're hopeful for your approval. I'm certainly open to any comments or questions you may have as well. I wanted to keep it brief, but I'm happy to delve into any details that you might wonder about.
Lisa?
Yeah, thank you. For clarification, Gabe, the application aid is right around $45,000. As I read it, that was an attachment in board book, just a titch under.
Mhm.
Is that a fully state funded program? Do we have a matching component of that?
So the aid application is based off of our enrollment of American Indian students. And sorry, so with the matching component, are you asking? I'm
just asking. So if is the entirety of the budget for this plan $45,000, and it's coming from that state aid, or do we have a district component to these specific items as well?
Sure, great question. So one of the district components is that, this is part of the funding for my role, for the liaison role. So part of the district's contribution is in fully staffing me and allowing me some of the latitude to meet the needs of these students. I also know that we support our American Indian students in other ways, like this is just the funding that doesn't have existing programming. So the funding, perhaps this will answer the question better. This is additional funding that when we have other funding allocated to goal areas, we would stop using this funding. So this funding, I guess I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the exact term, but this funding is meant to be additive.
I'll jump in, Lisa, and say the pieces that are addressed outside of the IEPP, the Indian Education Program Plan, we offer our ADSIS services to support our students at risk for third grade reading, and that operates outside of this. Gabe's role is partnered or is funded both through this and through our achievement and integration. I would say that supplement piece that we have is when we bring teachers together to develop curriculum around those trunks. It isn't necessarily fully funded out of here. Some of that is shouldered by the district as well, because that meets the needs of all kids and not only our native kids.
Okay, terrific. I that makes complete sense to me, because I feel like this is a significant amount of work, and that was not a large budgetary item. So it makes sense that there's other programs that align.
I do have a question, sort of curiosity, I guess. So we know that our schools are diversifying in Hastings. And so how does that look with our American Indian students? Are we seeing those numbers change from high school compared to kindergarten, or are those numbers staying relatively steady?
That's a great question. My recollection from looking at Dakota County data was that the American Indian population and its projections for growth is relatively stable and possibly negative. But between this year's numbers and last year's, it's about the same. When it comes to numbers, one of the challenges, one of the first places I'll always look is the MDE report card. And one of the challenges with the numbers of American Indian students is if they are recognized at a federal level or at a state level. So like for the purposes of our state program, American Indian students are self-identified or identified by a parent. For the purposes of like federal American Indian recognition, it would come down to enrollment on a tribal, to being listed on a tribal roll. And so with that said, we look at numbers a couple different ways, but my understanding is we have about 106 students or so this year who have self-identified, and that number K-12 is about what the number was last year. A challenge in that as well, and I know Missy Williams has been working on this and has done some excellent things with our data searching. A challenge in that is that historically in some data sources, when an individual put down more than one racial category, even if it were per se Dakota and Ojibwe as two separate groups, it was categorized as two or more. And so the answer, Kelsey, is pardon me, Chairperson Waits. The answer really, our number is about the same. However, the number looks different depending on who you're asking what the number is.
Complicated answer, which is basically how this usually goes. So
yeah,
thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
just curious.
I was just glancing over at the Minnesota report card, and well, Gabe gave the number of 190 district-wide. From the state of Minnesota's perspective, it's 27 or something like that, and that's a different. And two or more races is a different line, but that really comes down to that federal and state designation category, which certainly looks like it eliminates a lot of people, or it excludes a lot of people.
And if I may add, Lisa, I would say that a point of emphasis with my connections this year is also in connecting with American Indian families so they can consent to our program, which was which is something we keep up with and we do every year, try and make sure that every person who is new has a chance to consent and opt into that. And so I'm hopeful to have a number from my own personal outreach that I can share as well in the near future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, I'm not seeing any.
All right.
So thank you again.
So then next up, thanks, Gabe. We have Jen Reichel and Megan Miller. We wanted to give a report on how we're meeting the needs of our students who are in the process of needing intervention, how we're supporting kids through this time, all the way up through our students who qualify for special education. And so I'll have Jen and Megan give you that information.
Megan, I'll bring up the slide deck if that's okay. I'll jump through the beginning and then you can tell me when you want me to advance the slides.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. So we wanted to begin with kind of a big overview and then narrow in toward that special education or students needed the most robust amount of support. So our topics tonight really are how we address the needs of all of our students, and then we'll shift to how we address the needs of some of our students who are needing a little bit more support, and then really digging into how do we address the needs of the few students who have even more needs than that. So when we look at all of our students at the elementary level, because we've talked about, we have our core curriculum. Math focuses on the development of number sense, and we use the Bridges resource. Our language arts is a reading, writing, and phonics based program that's really leaning into the balanced literacy approach. We have McCullough implemented second step social emotional learning last year, and Pinecrest and Kennedy are this year adding it to their repertoire for kids. We have social studies content that's really built through teacher expertise. Science, I've already talked about. We're kind of a work in progress and those shifts. And then we offer all of our kids art, music, and physical education. And really the model at the elementary is that we're differentiating instruction and pulling small groups where needed in the classroom with no additional support when we think about all kids. We also have some enhancements to our curriculum. We operate much like the rest of the district does in offering Hastings Reads. I think some of you know about that program. It's a community-wide piece, and we have folks on staff who help us with that. And then morning meeting is part of our social emotional, but really about that relationship building. When we think about the middle school level, again, core curriculum is really focused on that differentiated instruction, small group, and engagement strategies. Hastings Reads is part of our middle school as well. Our social emotional learning at the middle school level, there's a strong partnership with our special ed department. The middle school focuses on PBIS, positive behavior intervention system, and uses their advisory as a time to teach and practice those expectations. And then our counselors do a bullying presentation. There's a signs of suicide survey for our 7th graders and a Say Something initiative at our 8th graders. Again, these are for all students at the middle school. As far as engagement and belonging, there's a focus on that through advisories that during the day piece, and then outside of the day, clubs and organizations, fine arts and athletics, or some of those are in the day. And then the supports, which really belong at the next level, our reading and math lab are something that some of our students have access to. And then at the high school, and we have 2 pages for the high school, our core curriculum really focuses on that college and career readiness. We do have some differentiated instruction through small groups. There are some courses that are arranged by ability level, and then those engagement strategies are part of the day-to-day work that we do that are available to all students. At the high school, we also participate in Hastings Reads. We're working toward social emotional learning with Second Step, strong partnership with special ed. In health 9 and 10, there's a depression screener, positive decision making, nutrition, chemical ed. There are peer helpers available. For that engagement and belonging piece, we have lots at the high school. Our link crew is there. Advisory is something that's new to us this year that we're practicing in this COVID hybrid environment. Lots of clubs, organizations at the high school, fine arts and athletics. There's a group called Bloom. That's our student diversity group. Gabe works with that group along with a number of other teachers. We have a GSA group, a gender and sexuality awareness group. And then in 9th grade, there's a respect retreat, and there are peer tutors available for all. For some students, when we look across the district, we have title at elementary and ADSIS, which is a counterpart similar to title, where we invite reading intervention from K to 8 for ADSIS, K to 4 for title. We have school social workers for our elementary who participate with us in social and emotional needs. Our elementary has focused on responsibility-centered discipline, RCD. You've heard about that training that our teachers participated in 2 opportunities, 2 full days of professional development last year. And RCD is really about supporting students to be responsible for their actions. In 9th grade, we offer a Raider Study Center, the Avid Elective that you all have so strongly supported as we've moved into there. Our Avid Elective exists in 9, 10, 11, and 12 this year. And we offer in both our middle schools and high schools a number of support groups, including, but not limited to, our grief and loss group, depression and anxiety, chemical concerns and social skills. And then we lean into community in the schools for some of our students who need a little bit more than what they get in the built for all traditional curriculum and programming. And now I'm going to turn it over to Megan. You just let me know when you want me to shift slides.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well, we do have supports that are also supporting a smaller percentage of our students. For example, with special education, which I'll talk about more in the next slides. We continue to have TAP therapists that are co-located therapists in our buildings provided by Canvas Health. We still have access to Renee Sterno and Associates. And we have mental health case management, Melissa Schill at the high school, which are some some are consistent with years past, and some are changes such as Melissa moving into her position at the high school. Next slide, please. With the changes to our learning model, we've had to make some changes with how we are delivering services to our students who are receiving special services in our district. And as we've made these decisions, we have had some guiding principles that we have really focused on as we're making those decisions. And I really like to talk about the golden thread of special services. And whenever we're making decisions, we want to make sure that we are looking at students' evaluations, comprehensive evaluations that are identifying needs a student has. They're linked to that plan that show the goals, the services. We're also looking at the adaptations, modifications, additional supports a student needs, and making sure that all of our decisions are in line with that golden thread of service for students. Our changes that we have made also, we want to ensure that students are being educated in their least restrictive setting. With our change in learning models, many students are only coming to school 2 days a week in our district. Some are engaging in the Hastings Online Academy. So when we do have students here in school, we want them in their general education classes with their peers as much as is appropriate based on their need for service with their special education service provider. We also want to make sure the service is consistent for the student. And finally, we want to make sure that we are mitigating risks for our students and our staff. So these are our 4 really guiding principles that we considered as we made some changes in response to a different learning, this new learning model for our students. Next slide, please. So we've had to make some adaptations to our service delivery model. We love adaptations in special education, and these were all outlined or are all outlined in the contingency learning plans that every single one of our students receiving special services has. And these CLPs outline the services how the services listed in the student's IEP are going to be delivered during the distance learning or hybrid model. We've invited parents into these conversations. We've gotten input from the IEP team to make these plans for all of our students. We also are, in these plans, we are delivering as much as possible our related services virtually. The reason related services such as occupational therapy, speech language therapy, because these related service providers work across grade level and with many students in many classrooms, we really want to mitigate risk and avoid having these service providers going into many classrooms throughout the day. We also want to ensure that the students are able to stay in their general ed classroom as much as they can throughout the day. If a student is only coming to school in person twice a day, we want to make sure that student can be with their peers and their teacher as much as possible. So it might make more sense for that speech language pathologist to deliver the bulk of the service virtually when the student is actually at home on their distance learning days. We're ensuring that the services are need-driven rather than schedule-driven. This has had a big impact, especially at our secondary levels. Historically, many of the special education services at the secondary level have been taught in skills classes, which are classes that have encompassed a lot of different services in one. And what we want to make sure is that with our guiding principle of being consistent, if a student had a skills class, say third period at the high school, they would have that third period right now for 85 minutes per day. But starting the next 4.5-week rotation of classes, the student would not have that skills class. Therefore, they'd go 4.5 weeks without that special education service. In response to that, we collapsed the skills classes during this time, and we have our service providers meeting with students during their general education classes to provide those services, either pushing into classes or pulling students out of classes for shorter periods of time. We've also increased the number of co-taught classes that we have at the high school in order to have the special education teachers in the class with the students. We also know that historically in the skills classes, this was a time for students to receive a lot of accommodations, such as having directions broken down, or having a test read, or having time to retake a test, or having something read to them, or something scribed for them. In an effort to still provide these accommodations, we have created in-person and virtual accommodation rooms for our students. So at the middle school and the high school, there are in-person accommodation rooms that students can ask for a pass to go to. So if at the end of class, they are needing a quieter area to work, if they're needing more individual support to complete something, they can access that accommodations room. We also have a absolutely fabulous virtual accommodations room that is being staffed by 5 of our wonderful PSAs. And students K through 12 can access this room via a Zoom link that was sent out to all families of students receiving special services. And so students can access this virtual accommodations room if they are at home and they are in need of support. Once again, they're overwhelmed by an assignment. They need help breaking down the instructions. They don't quite understand what they need to do. So maybe the PSA will help work through context clues to help them understand what they need to do. And so that is open to all of our students K-12. Next slide, please. We've also, I also want to highlight our English learners. Our English learner staff are working very hard. We were allocated another 0.5 FTE to support our ELs at the secondary level. The team of 3 teachers and 2 PSAs are working very hard to, they've developed a schedule to allocate themselves across the district to meet the needs of students who are in person as well as participating in the HOA, the Hastings Online Academy. We do have a fairly large number of ELs who are participating in the Hastings Online Academy. There's also a big focus on virtual instruction in order to keep students in class, in their classes as much as possible with their content area instructors, also keeping risk mitigation in mind. The students who in school and at HOA have access to PSA support throughout the day. And we're also using in-person and exploring remote screeners for identification. Currently, we do have permission from the state to do provisional identification for this year using some remote screeners. So we are exploring that to make sure that we are identifying and meeting the needs of all of our ELs.
Indeed. And Missy put together another piece for us that highlights, again, how we're meeting the needs of students through our technology access. So as you likely know, we have shifted very quickly to a one-to-one with student devices in order to make this hybrid work. Chromebooks were distributed to all enrolled students in grades 5 through 12. iPads were distributed early on to all Hastings Online Academy students in grade K through 4. And then we needed to order a chunk of iPads in order to have one for each student. And those iPads will be distributed to those non-Hastings Online Academy kiddos in K4 beginning this week. So we've begun to hand those out. Internet access, we've been diligent at the sites to provide some resources that have been created to help families connect to low-cost internet providers in the area. And that link is available on our website for families. We also have 80 T-Mobile hotspots and 60 Kajits available. Those are pucks, if you will, that a family can use and connect district devices to it in order to access resource or internet. for families who are unable to obtain or afford home internet service, and for families who live in rural areas where high-speed, reliable service is not available. We know that in some parts of our community, even if a family was interested in purchasing service, it just is a little bit sketchy in places. And so we know we're a work in progress there. Those are the pieces that we wanted to talk to you about tonight as far as meeting the needs of students, all of our students, some of our students, and then for a few of our students. What questions do you have for Megan and me that maybe we'll be able to answer for you?
All right, Lisa.
Megan, could you tell me a little bit more about what a remote screener means with regard to an EL student? Does that just mean a virtual assessment, like a Zoom assessment?
Yes, it is. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
On the same topic of EL students, I know that some of the feedback I had gotten in the spring was that it was really difficult because parents couldn't necessarily understand what's been going on. And so now that, we've been putting our district communications out in multiple languages, and are we starting to see, a good response to that? How are parents doing right now with this online learning when they're not really able to help their kids, from home if they're not understanding it? And what is that looking like right now?
Well, I did meet with the EL staff just yesterday, and I think that they're expressing that there is still some struggle with communication and making sure that students are able to, or parents are able to understand what is expected of their students. The EL staff are just going above and beyond to reach out to families and reach out to students to make sure they know their schedule, they know when they're supposed to be on Zooms, really talking with them about how they can help students build that independence so that they know when they need to be Zooming into classes or meeting with their HOA instructor, helping them, set their timer or their alarm on their phone, and just helping them build that, teaching them the skills to help them build that independence so that they can work on that. And that's more at the secondary level. So I think from the feedback that I'm getting is that it's better than it was in the spring, but we still have work to do, and we will still keep persevering to make sure that we are supporting students and the families and making sure they have what they need.
I guess my question is kind of tied to the internet access. Are we doing as good as we can? Do we need to search up more hotspots, or how are we doing there?
My understanding is that we're doing well and that we're really providing access for all of the parents who have indicated there's a need. But certainly, Dr. McDowell, if you have an update from Missy that I'm not aware of, please feel free to share.
No, I don't. I would just concur. We're doing really well. In fact, we haven't needed to give out all of our hotspots, so we have plenty, which is exactly where we planned to hopefully be at this point, is to have enough plus some, because we know things change as the year goes on, and those that may have access now may not in a month or in a week, and so we want to be ready for that.
Great. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any. I'm sure everyone just heard my child banging doors in the background, though. I apologize for that. All right. So then I guess thank you for the summary and for all of the great work that you're doing. I know that this is a really stressful time right now, and we're all kind of trying to figure out this new reality. And so we appreciate all of the time and effort you're putting into helping our kiddos.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to move on to the school board committee reports, beginning with policy committee.
All right, I'm just pulling it up. So the policy committee, we met twice in September, and that is actually going to be kind of our standard practice. We did agree to committing to 2 policies per month, at least until the end of the calendar year. As you previously saw, we really focused on policy 522, which is that Title IX policy. And then we also dug into 616, which is the school district system accountability. Jen Reichel was able to join us and give us an overview of policy 616, which is, we go over the goals, how we deliver the curriculum, and the evaluation of that curriculum, along with how the community is tied into all of that. Dr. McDowell and Jen are going to really dig into this policy and revamp it to meet our needs. So I know that's something that they are currently working on. Our priorities are, the policy 616, obviously, 522, and then we're working on gender inclusion. So on the 15th, we met and we're looking at this baseline policy to outline the district's stance on equity inclusion, and the policy should be ready for hopefully the first reading in October. And then the employee social media policy. So we looked at a few different models within different districts. 196 has a really good policy that we think that is like a really good starting point for our district. And there's it says in the summary that it should be ready for September. That's supposed to be October. We're also working on, obviously, 506, policy 506, which is the discipline policy. And that is going to be like a collaborative effort type policy to get input from administration and teachers. We're going to look at further reviewing 806, which I'm trying to remember offhand. The crisis management policy. And then the school visitor policy, which is the 903A. And that's not the actual, 903A isn't the actual policy. I believe that's the actual visitor form. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bob. And then I'm working on a suicide prevention policy, which is really hard to find. I've yet to find a policy within Minnesota. There's a lot of things that are being done within Minnesota as far as suicide prevention, but no actual models of actual policies that I've been able to find. So I'm digging into that. Yeah, and that is the summary for the policy committee, pending your questions.
All right. Do we have any questions? I don't know why I can't get out of full screen mode here. So everyone just. All right. I'm not seeing any questions. Thank you, Stephanie. So we will move on to the facilities committee. And so facilities actually just met on Monday. And one of our first items up for discussion was the costs related to COVID and looking at our HVAC systems. So as we had mentioned in the previous board meeting, we've changed filters and upgraded them to as high as we can without sacrificing or without restricting the airflow. And so it was really finding this balance between, the biggest filters we can get, but still allowing that air to move. And then we've made other adjustments, such as the fan motors. We've heard from a number of teachers and staff members regarding the CPOD at the high school, which seems to kind of have some difficulty, flakes out every once in a while. And so CAM is looking into what that problem could be. So far, they've been unable to identify what that problem is, but they are still trying to figure it out. For Todd Field, we are still trying to figure out the repairs and long-term safety. And so the Department of Transportation, owns the sidewalk portion there. And so we can't put anything on the sidewalks to improve safety. And so we're actually looking at potentially adding in a crash rated fence. But then again, the difficulty comes in this can't be on Department of Transportation land. And so it would have to be moved in quite a bit into the field. And it would be 10 to
Into the
15
bleachers.
foot.
Into
Yeah,
the
into the
bleachers
bleacher area. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. I was
Bleacher
like, that
area.
doesn't sound right. Thank you. Just the way I said it. Move it into the bleacher area. So it would need to be 10 to 15 feet tall. And so trying to figure out what that looks like and what the cost would be. When the truck had crashed through, electrical conduit was also damaged. And so there is a contractor already identified to address that. We started looking at kind of an update on the bond projects that had been identified by the task force and what was upcoming. And we're actually going to go back and look at this next month. We've asked for the data sheet to be adjusted into a more clear format. And it was a little difficult to kind of read and make sense of it. And so we'll be coming back to that, looking at what can be used with the long-term facility maintenance dollars versus the bond dollars. Long-term facility maintenance currently has $3.9 million in that fund. And so how can we best use that money on projects now so that, the cost of those projects doesn't increase throughout time? So how can we make the best use of those dollars? Lastly, we discussed our technology dollars. And so this is something that we'll talk about more as a board. Currently, each year we set aside $1,000 or $100,000 into a technology fund. And this was just a way to make sure that we always had that money set aside. And we discussed potentially recapturing this money as we talk about budget adjustments, because we do have bond dollars that we can use on technology. And so is there something we can use now in this short term as we figure out this, the budget adjustment? We do already have about $1 million set aside from this $100,000 set aside. So we do also have some funds there. So for example, some more of the technology bits is we discussed using bond dollars to upgrade the lights at the elementary and high school level to LEDs. And then this would use bond dollars to make that improvement, but then that would save the district money each year on energy costs. So it's not necessarily a lot of money. For example, Kennedy, the initial cost would be about $23,000, and we would see an average savings of around $5,000 a year. So it is a piece that adds up. And we cannot use long-term facility maintenance dollars for upgrades like this. So that is important to note. And then we'll also be doing an all-inclusive energy assessment in the near future to determine if there's any other ways that we can find kind of energy savings. So are there any questions, or do Dave and Lisa have anything to add?
I think that pretty well covered it.
All right. So then with that, we can move on to action items. So first up is the consent agenda, which if you go into board book, there have been some questions about that I've seen online. So the consent agenda is all in board book. So you can have access to all of these forms online. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So
Second.
Somewhere
Is there any
along.
discussion?
Becky will sort it out.
All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Next up is the Community Education Fund transfer. So this is a motion to approve the transfer of $140,562.77. And so this is as a result of compliance with the executive orders regarding COVID and the child care and such. So this is a resolution and will need a roll call vote.
So move.
Second.
Sorry, I'm getting there.
Mhm. It looks like you're traveling in pretty luxurious circumstances there, Steph. That's pretty high-end concrete block behind you.
Well, Camp Ripley, only the best. Sorry. It was Dave that made the motion, right? And
Yep. Lisa.
Yeah.
Thank you. Got distracted.
Well, I'm glad to see our tax dollars aren't going over.
Yep.
All right.
They're nice and shiny and clean too.
Introduce the following resolution and move for its adoption. For the resolution 2020-1. We'll go into the reading here. Whereas the Board of Education of the Hastings Public Schools recognizes its responsibility under their declaration of a peacetime emergency to provide free child care to the families of Tier 1 emergency workers as described in Governor Walz's Executive Order 20-02 and 20-19. Furthermore, ISD 200 has chosen to honor the Governor's recommendation to provide child care to the families of Tier 2 emergency workers, including all district employees. Whereas the Board of Education recognizes that the regular community education staff is uniquely qualified to provide this service to children in the age range of 3 to 12 years old. Whereas Executive Order 20-19 provides unique flexibility to the Board of Education to transfer operating funds from certain programs that are not already assigned to or encumbered by staff salary and benefits to provide childcare to eligible children during the school day. Whereas ISD 200 intended to support the retention of regular community education employees for the long-term benefit of the community for which it serves. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Education intends to formally approve a transfer on June 24, 2020 from the General Fund, Fund 01, to the Community Education Fund, Fund 04, in the amount equivalent to 50% of the actual losses incurred in Fund 04 as a result of their compliance with Executive Order 20-02 and 20-19. Lisa Hedin seconded this motion, and voting in favor of the resolution, we will do a roll call. Becky Beisel?
Yes.
Brian Davis?
Yes.
Dave Pemble?
Yes.
Lisa Hedin?
Yes.
Stephanie Malm? Yes. And Kelsey Waits?
Yes.
Excellent.
Right, thank you. Now we have approval of the collective bargaining agreement for our food service workers. So do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the food service master contract, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Next up is a motion to approve the proposed maximum levy limitations and certification of the 2019 payable 2020 levy.
So move.
Second.
This, you know what, this will be a roll call vote as well. So.
Hey, we ready for the roll call vote then? Okay.
Yes.
Becky Beisel?
Yes.
Brian Davis?
Yes.
Lisa Hedin?
Yes.
Dave Pemble?
Yes.
Stephanie Malm? Yes. And Kelsey Waits?
Yes. Alrighty, so that takes us to the end of our action items. So all that's left is future meetings. So we have a board work session on October 7th, and then 2 policy committee meetings, one on the 13th and one on the 20th. And then we have we have one next week.
Yeah, did we end up, we moved it from the 29th to the
to the 30th.
The 30th. It's on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, but we do also have one set up for the 30th. So lots of policy committee meetings. I hope everyone's excited for all of those that are being brought forward. Lisa, did you have something to add, or are you showing excitement?
Yeah, no, although I am excited. Yay, policy. We do have a self-funded insurance committee meeting coming up. I don't have the date in front of me, but I think that should be represented on there.
Okay, Dave, and then Superintendent McDowell.
I just wanted to make sure that Becky's going to send out something about the facilities for next month. My October schedule is filling up very fast, so I want to get that tied up early.
All right.
And then I wanted to point out that we do have a board retreat coming up on October 2nd and 3rd. And that will be at Carpenter Nature Center, the evening of the 2nd, Friday the 2nd, and then from 9 to 3 on the 3rd.
Is that at the main visitor center or at their lodge? They're slightly different locations. Well, we can sort that out.
I think Becky may have that answer. I don't know.
It's about a half a mile difference in the entrance.
I'll send out an email with confirmation and directions to everyone, but I believe it's at the lodge.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
All right, great. Well, then with that, I guess, yes.
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry. So I presume to be determined means we're debating in person versus Zoom, or that's standing open. Is that an accurate assumption?
Yeah, we had talked about discussing that at the next work session, kind of what we want, like moving forward and how Dave is doing, and if we can get back into in-person meetings.
Okay, so we would likely anticipate that the work session on the 7th would be a Zoom meeting, and that a topic of discussion would be our practices about meeting. Is that kind of how you think it would play out?
I think so, yeah.
Likely. Okay. All right, and I'm sure Becky can find this super easily, but self-funded insurance is on the 21st of October.
She put it down 3:30.
Do I need to refresh? I'm not refreshing my meeting.
Okay.
It's probably on
Oh,
there now.
that
already.
was Jen. Jen sent a message in the chat.
Oh, it's in chat. She's faster than me. I barely found it, much less typed it anywhere.
All right, any other questions? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
So moved. Oh, sorry, Dave. So moved, or second, whichever we need.
Whichever, however.
Hey, Steph, just give me the second and give Dave the first. He can go first.
Oh. Good to hear from you, Brian.
I'm there from you, man.
There you go. Stop by sometime.
I'd like to.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, motion adjourned.
Take care, everybody.